I really, really appreciate being asked to be a part of this process today. It's given me a lot of opportunity to think about the library, and I just think that this is such a wonderful approach to a new strategic plan. I think all the questions that are being asked so far are great, and look forward to all of you asking your questions. And I'm going to ask a few questions tonight as well. Jackie Nidos actually was one of the first people I got to know in the community. When I first got here in 1993, I went through it was a chamber and SKL program at the time called Opportunity Indianapolis, where you get to learn about your community. It was a great opportunity for me being new from California, and one of my classmates was Jackie Nidos, and we've been friends ever since, and I've been a huge fan of what she's done in this community from so many different vantage points. So it's an extra special that I get to kind of connect with her around her not new role, but her role as CEO of the library. Also, this building. So we have an Inspiring Places initiative at CICF, and this building to me is the most inspiring building, inspiring interior atmosphere and environment. I love everything about this building, and when I do a cultural trail tour, I always make sure that I come down one end of the American Legion Mall, and we always stop and we look at the architecture, and I share my admiration for how the new building kind of gently embraces and hugs this beautiful old historic building, and every time we celebrate what a success I think this building is. And everyone pretty much agrees with me, by the way, on the tour. Maybe it's because if they don't agree, I won't teach them how to get off a Segway, so... Yeah, I don't kid myself. They agree. They agree maybe at a survival, but the library building is now beloved as it should be. So my task for the next 15 minutes or so is to try to set the stage of what is happening in our community from one person's vantage point, the Community Foundation's president's vantage point. So what are the current and emerging themes, trends, opportunities? How can the library, our public library, help us seize those opportunities, shape those trends, shape those answers, ask the right questions? Now, we at CICF believe that for Indianapolis to thrive in the 21st century, we as a community must do a great job. We must do a great job of developing, attracting, and retaining highly educated, creative, entrepreneurial, and community-minded citizens. If we can do that, we will just have an incredible success in the 21st century. If we don't do that, we will slip into a second and maybe third-tier city. All the research shows this. Another thing the research shows is that the cities that have these kinds of human resources are just automatically attracting more. And the cities that don't have enough aren't attracting them at a very high rate. So the cities, in this case, that are rich with highly educated, creative, entrepreneurial people are just naturally getting more without doing a lot. And the cities that don't have enough are working hard and maybe not turning the corner at all. Now, we sit right in the middle. There's 51 metro areas of 1 million people or more in the United States. We're about the 35th largest metro area, 36th, 37th. And we sit right about 27 when it comes to percentage of highly educated people. So we have an opportunity to turn that and to build on that, but we have to do it through very smart, strategic decisions, very hard work, very collaborative work. So let's take each one of these ambitions that we have at CICF for our community one at a time and see what the library might be able to do. So highly educated. Okay, so this is the traditional role of a library, or one of its traditional roles, right? It's to help children and students and adults get the information and help them learn, build their education, give them the resources, give them some great programs. So that's a traditional role. But can that role be expanded in new ways? And I'm not just talking about digital expansion, though certainly that has happened, but other new ways of thinking about the library's role in creating a highly educated citizenry. What about the third grader who can't read? I'm sure there's probably some programs, but are there new programs? Is there a different kind of program to reach more third graders who can't read at grade level, which, as you probably heard, is the kind of turning point. So it's a cliche now that when you're up until third grade, you're learning to read. Once you hit third grade, you have to read to learn. And if you don't read at grade level at third grade, that starts the precipice down. So that's a very well-established data point in the conversation about education. Is there something new, different, innovative that the library could do to reach more of those third graders? How about the 16-year-old who's dropped out of high school, who's lost hope, who's lost any kind of vision for his or her future? What can the library do to capture that person's imagination, give them a sense of purpose and a sense of hope for the future? What about the 70-year-old retiree who's now looking to redesign themselves, re-innovate themselves around what are they going to do in this fourth quarter of their life? What are they going to do to be productive, to have a meaningful life, no matter what economic strata they're at? Could the library play a role in that? What if Indianapolis was the best city in America at creating really meaningful civic and economic opportunities for seniors? To the point where maybe you're from California or Portland, Oregon, Washington, D.C., and you retire at 65, and you say, you know what, I don't really want to go play golf 5 times a day, or 5 times a week even. Yeah, and some people do play 5 times a day, but they're a lot in better health than I am. But, maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe I should go to Indianapolis and really have an incredibly productive civic, cultural, economic life because they know how to provide a system of opportunities for me as a 70-year-old. That could be pretty life-changing for all of us. Moving on to creative people. What role could the library play in making us more creative, a more innovative community with a more creative, innovative culture where we celebrate this, where we certainly have pockets that we celebrate our creativity and our innovation, and it's getting better and better all the time. It actually, from the 20 years I've been here, it is such a world of difference. But what could we do to continue to build on that? We at CICF, we actually believe that every human being is inherently creative. But some get that creativity nurtured, and some get it beat out of them. How can the library play a role in really creating a culture where we really nurture our creativity? There's lots of cool things in this building, and I know there's, with the Curve, there's other creative programs. That's one of the things I love most about this building. I think it is a creative building. It inspires me creatively when I'm here. Both the historic building and the new building and the way they work together and the atrium. I mean, it is a awesome, creative space. But what else could the library do? Could it set up a temporary pop-up library at one of my new favorite haunts, the Calvin Fletcher Coffee Company on the Cultural Trail in Fletcher Place? What if there was a pop-up library there for a month or 2 months with a resource, either a Ball State College, a graduate student or a library, reference library, and all of a sudden there was, for that month or 6 weeks or 8 weeks, 200 books on design and urban planning. First of all, a lot of creatives hang out there already, so you already have an audience. And for that 2 months, we know that we're going to gather there as a community and have a very special conversation and have our thoughts about the design of our city, the design of our neighborhood, kindled by what goes on at the Calvin Fletcher Coffee Company for a couple of months. Or what about a poetry pop-up library at the Unleavened Bread Cafe, which is something Jackie herself has helped to nurture over the years in her role at Mapleton Fall Creek as the head of the CDC. What if for 2 months, if you cared all about poetry, which by the way, some of the most exciting poetry I hear is coming out of African American spoken word artists. So what can we do to bring people and really enhance and motivate all of us to be more creative about the written word and how we express ourselves? Entrepreneurial. So I've always felt, as someone who worked in the arts, that the entrepreneur was the artist of the business community. I've loved entrepreneurs. I've always felt a connection to them. We went out and recruited them on our board at CICF very purposefully. And one of the things we know about, we know maybe more about the state of Indiana, but I think it's true about Indianapolis as well, is that we're not creating enough new businesses. We're underperforming on new business formation. We're spending probably maybe more time than we should on trying to convince people who've already created businesses to bring them here, where we could really focus on having our citizens create exciting new businesses. So certainly that's happening, but how could we enhance that? How could the library play a role in that? And the fact is, we need more creative jobs to attract and retain the workers that we want at the wages that will lift up the city. So we need entrepreneurs. What can the library do to make that happen? Maybe there's a couple-month pop-up at the Madam Walker Theater and Cultural Center. Madam Walker, one of our great historic entrepreneurs. Why don't we, find ways to bring the community together there and all get inspired and nurtured about our entrepreneurial ideas. Community-minded. Now, this is an area where I do think we already excel as a community. I think no one does community better than Indianapolis. We always talk about the fact that if you want to go to a place and be a cultural consumer, okay, maybe Indianapolis is not going to ever be New York, Chicago, Washington, D.C., Boston. But if you want to be a cultural producer, this is the place. You can come here from anywhere. You can come here from California, and people will nurture you about getting involved in community and open the doors and kick open the doors and make connections. But how do we engage even more people? People in the neighborhoods, which, by the way, we have great neighborhood leadership. I'm so impressed with the commitment we have in our neighborhoods. People who've lived in these neighborhoods 20, 25 years, who've been disappointed in the past at times, who still get up every day and dream about a better future for their neighborhood and their family and their fellow neighbors. But maybe there's branch libraries who could, do even more programming. I know there's a lot that goes on. Maybe there's a way that they could play a role in, festivals, and maybe the branch libraries themselves become a pop-up opportunity where they have become the heart for a while of food trucks and, mentoring and, volunteer opportunities, that it's like, okay, I'm going to go to my branch library and I'm going to get engaged at a deeper level while I learn a skill to make a bigger difference in my neighborhood and my community. So this is a great conversation that's going on with the library. And one of the other things we could talk about is, what role could the library do in job creation? I mean, there's a conversation right now going on that, some of it's the cultural trail, some of it's the great work of Keep Indianapolis Beautiful. There's actually about 25 organizations, including CICF and KIB and Eli Lilly and Citizens Energy and lots of others, all the universities that are involved. It's called Reconnecting to Our Waterways, with the idea of transforming our waterways into such incredible assets that they will lift up our neighborhoods to a higher plane. What role could the library play in that green infrastructure? Because the conversation is, we have there's this commitment now to the idea of creating access to art, nature, and beauty every day for everybody. Think about that. So I don't want to hear about the fact that we don't have oceans and we don't have mountains. We know that. We don't need to talk about that. We never need to talk about that again, actually. Okay? But what we do need to talk about is the fact that we could be the best city in America at creating access to art, nature, and beauty every day for everybody. And I can tell you, I grew up in San Diego, but I did not have daily access to the ocean. Whenever I say San Diego, people envision La Jolla shores. And I always tell people, no, I grew up 15 miles south and $5 million inland from La Jolla. So I would get to the beach about 15 times a year, where my parents would drive me, or when I finally got my car, I would drive myself there. But that was not a daily part of my life, the Pacific Ocean. It was a special opportunity when I could get it. What was a daily part of my life was walking out of my house, exploring my neighborhood, if it had sidewalks, walking the sidewalks to parks, to nature opportunities around those parks. So it's about what happens in our neighborhoods, where people have access, where their life is lived every day. What if we were the best in the country at creating access to art, nature, and beauty every day for everybody? So there's this conversation going around about green and green maintenance. The thing is, you build a park, you got to maintain it. You build a cultural trail, you got to maintain it. And the thing for me that's most satisfying about the cultural trail, and the thing that for me that was most surprising, was that my favorite parts of the trail are where the landscaping is most beautiful. I can't name a single flower. I don't think we have any roses on that trail, so I can't name a single flower. I'm trying to learn this. Maybe I obviously need to spend more time in the library learning about flowers and plants before Jackie calls me out. But my favorite part of the trail is where it's beautiful, where the landscaping is so beautiful. And so we have this, KIB has this huge commitment, LISC, Local Initiative Support Corporation, which is this incredible partner in our community. There's so many people that have this commitment to really making our neighborhoods special through art, nature, and beauty and volunteerism. But there needs to be a system of maintaining that green and actually monetizing, making it an economic driver. And there's great ideas. I think the library could be a great partner in that. And then you connect that to job opportunities for kids and adults and offenders coming out of prison, re-entering into our community. It could be an incredible holistic system of green and beauty and opportunity. And I actually think the library can play a role in that. I'm just going to give you a couple of other themes that I think are important that are really major themes of our community that we need to ask about when we think about the role of the library in the next few years. Crime prevention. Again, helping ex-offenders re-enter and be productive and giving them a chance really to be productive and have an opportunity to be successful. Workforce preparedness. You hear all the time, we have a huge gap. We actually have a lot of jobs available, but the people don't have the skills for the jobs. So there's this mismatch. How are we going to bridge that? Huge, huge challenge. What role can the library play? Here's the one that I think is really also very important, and we don't do this very well because we as Hoosiers, and I've officially been adopted as a Hoosier in the last 20 years, is that we don't tell our stories very well. We don't self-promote very well. So we don't do a very good job of telling the narrative of our city. When I went to Portland with Carrie and other leaders and in the chamber, we went to Portland a year ago. Portland does a great job of overhyping its city, actually. You hear about Portland all the time. They actually, the image, the reputation, the way that Portland tells its story is far superior than Portland itself, okay? We're the opposite. We have an incredible community and city, and we tell our story so badly so often. But what is that narrative that we could all tell? And here's where the library could really, I think, looking at a perspective of knowledge and the past, they could partner with the Historical Society and the Chamber, who's been working on this, and the Arts Council, and humbly, Central Indiana Community Foundation would love to be in that conversation. But the library, I think, has a unique perspective and unique tools to help us. It's storytelling, right? It's storytelling. The library probably is an expert at storytelling. How could it become a third place for youth? How could it help seniors, again, to really figure out a way to be incredibly productive in that fourth quarter of their lives? And diversity and race. We need a safe, neutral place where we can talk productively and learn from each other about race, our perspectives of race and diversity. And I can't think of a better place than the library to actually convene those conversations. So there's a lot of ideas and themes to consider. Just a few other notes. Another kind of emerging themes in society that I've been kind of tracking is that this idea of being a curator or curating. You know, there's so much information in our lives today. We need a curator sometimes to pluck out the relevant information. We can drown in data and information. So how does that come into the role for the library? Again, I've mentioned pop-ups a lot. Pop-ups, very exciting because it can show the possibility and cut through the red tape. Things can happen like this that if they're going to be permanent, they'll take years. But you can create momentum, excitement, experiment with new ideas, get new people engaged by saying we're going to do something like a better block, which they did in East Washington Street for a day, or a pop-up restaurant, or a pop-up library, or a pop-up design studio. It can show an incredible amount of possibility and get the juices flowing in an incredibly short amount of time with a small investment. I think there's so much to be gained by being innovative around pop-ups. I think people are looking to be partners and not just donors. So as the library does its work, it's been a great partner, but think about how do we engage people, even people with resources, how do we engage partners, not just investors or donors? And then where really can we be, where should our centers of excellence be as a community? I've actually mentioned a lot of things. I know we can't do all of those things. Which ones are the ones that we should do from our narrative, from our special culture, our special skill set? What are our centers of excellence? How do we talk about them? And what should our additional centers of excellence be? So it's been really fun for me to be able to throw out ideas without any pressure to execute, to call out the whats without having to deal with the hows or boring details like budgets or staff capacity. But that is my role today. And you know what? That's your role today as well. So go at it, have fun. This library and this city is yours to create. Thanks a lot.